welcome back to the Southern Citizen Podcast. I'm your host, Hope Newsom Staples. On the show, we spend time talking to those I love to call Southern citizens. To be a Southern citizen in my book, you need only meet two requirements. Number one, you have to claim the American South as your homeland. And number two, you must be 75 years or older. And that's it. During each episode, we sit down with these Southern citizens and listen in as they share about their lives. Today, you will hear from my grandmother, Gloria. You first heard from Gloria on episodes 1 and 2 when I was interviewing my grandfather, Leonard. So those episodes are worth listening to if you want to get a better picture of their life together. As always, yours truly will be asking questions and doing my very best to keep us on track as we wander through time and space. Along with Gloria, you will hear questions and some brief commentary from my grandfather, Leonard. So it's time to listen in as we elevate the voice of a true Southern citizen. Okay, so we're ready for round 3. Huh?
Round 3. Let's go.
All right, let's figure out who we got here. So introduce yourself.
Gloria Langley.
And can you tell me when and where you were born?
Okay, I was born July the 15th, 1946 at Dr. Meerman's Clinic in Waynesboro, Mississippi.
Okay, and how old are you today?
I think I'm 77.
77?
Yeah,
Okay.
77.
All right, and Dee Daddy, remind us when and where you were born.
I was born in Wayne County in 1940.
And you were born at home, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you're kind of the sidekick today, right? So you might,
yeah,
if you have anything you want to interject,
Yeah,
you
I
just
come along for support and
raise your hand if you have anything you
yeah.
want to say.
be available if they need anything.
Okay. You can maybe you can confirm things, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get started. I've been thinking about this project, and I have a couple things I want us to open with.
Okay.
So I have this idea that anybody from the South, and we've kind of talked about this already in your conversation, that if you really are Southerner, you have some sort of memory or connection or experience with Elvis Presley.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind, when you hear the name Elvis, what comes to mind?
Good looking.
Okay, I like
Good
that.
singer.
Good singer. Growing up, though, did you have a memory of like was there anybody in your family that really just loved him? Or
Well, we did. We all did, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and we'd get a new record, or something. Somebody in the community, the teenagers, to get a new record. Well, everybody had to go to their house and
okay,
let them play it, and to hear it and all.
so it would be Elvis's records, and y'all would get together.
It was a big deal. And one Sunday they were having a movie he was in. It was I don't know what's the one. He's the cowboy. Something Star. Anyway, it was coming to Waynesboro, and we didn't go to the movies a lot. Not then. We'd done got a TV, and Daddy had quit taking us to the drive-in.
I got
so
you.
it was a big deal. So we begged, Mama and begged her, and she said, okay. Said, I'll take y'all. And us going to the movie, we sat up front. It was a big, big thing, Okay. We watched him, all from then on up until he passed away. We always loved to watch him. And my son Aaron, he never, he died before he was born, but I have his Elvis doll. Okay. But he loved Elvis.
The more I learn about Elvis, the more I just can't believe he left us at 42 years old.
Yeah.
Another thing, him being born in Mississippi, made us as Mississippians be very proud of him and, support him.
Yeah, there's an instant connection there just because he was from
absolutely.
Mississippi. So thinking about you growing up, what would you say is your probably earliest memory that you have?
My earliest memory, I think, was, and if I cry, is that all right? Okay.
Nobody can see us.
My grandma and granddaddy, Jordan, where we live, they would come, Grandma would, and wash her clothes. And there was a big cedar tree about halfway between our house and their house. And we had geese, and they'd go to hollering, and I'd know they were coming. So I'd beg Mama to let me go meet them, and she would, and I would supposedly, I was 3 or 4 years old, I would help Granddaddy get there because he was sick. Well, when we got there, Grandma and Mama would go. Daddy had bought Mama a Ringer washing machine, and it was on our back porch. They would go to washing clothes, but it was my job to take care of Granddaddy, Jordan. So we'd go in the front room, and we had a big old high bed. It was my brother's room, but he would lay down, and I would get up, and I knew how to operate the record player. So I would put Ernest Tubb on for him, play it, and get up there and lay down with him. And that, I guess that's probably one of my very earliest, but I do remember when he passed away.
Okay.
And I was probably 4, 5.
So he was sick from the time, really, you
He
remember.
had stomach cancer. It's what they assumed back then, you know. I can remember the house. I told my mama, I told her what it all looked like. And she said, absolutely, that's what it looked like, you know, the memories I had. And they had Granddaddy in a casket up in the living room. And my daddy brought my brother, and he was, I guess, he was about 2 and a half. And he won't know why Granddaddy was asleep. Why wouldn't he get up? And I don't know why, but that always just kind of resonated with me, and I remember. But it was always good memories, very good memories,
That's
Back
awesome.
in them days, they'd bring the dead bodies home and sit up with them.
And folks in the community would come through.
Like
Like a
they'd
visitation.
stay all night. They'd stay all night. They didn't leave your body back then, you know. And they would come and bring food and stay all night and
then the next
till
day.
the time for the funeral. And we went to Shady Grove Baptist Church, and it was a little one-room church. Had the tar paper, looked like bricks all on it, but it was one room. And my granddaddy was a big leader in the church. He was a deacon, and he loved the Lord. And when him and Grandma got married, they both didn't come from a Christian home per se. And certainly him not. His daddy was into a lot of things, and he had a bad experience growing up. And Grandma, her family left when she was probably 20 and went to the Deltas. So they had each other, you know, and they supported each other in their faith. Grandma was Assembly of God, and Granddaddy was a Baptist, but they worked it out. She would go to her church when they didn't have church at Shady Grove, and they was never argued about it. It was just the way it was, you know. It was a good example. It just worked things out.
So they were probably first generation Christians.
Right, exactly. They left a legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, let's talk about your mom's side of the family. I know recently you've learned more about her experience. So, but maybe you can kind of back up and
my grandma was a Pew.
This is your mom's.
This is my mother's mother.
Okay.
And my grandmother was a big part of my life. Very special.
What was her name?
Her name was Lily Ziola Pew Jordan. Okay. And when I was born early. And if it had not been for my grandma, I would not be here. It was in July, but still, I was so premature. I didn't weigh but a little over 3 pounds. She put me in a apple box. Well, they toted me in a shoe box because I was so little, and used a men's handkerchief for my diaper, and used an eyedropper to feed me. And my mama said I didn't have any eyebrows, no fingernails or anything. So Grandma built a fire in the fireplace. Now in July, you can imagine how hot. And they didn't let the women up for 2 weeks after they had babies. So she took care of me. And she would sit and make sure I was warm. But just think how many years ago that was.
She knew to do
Well,
that.
they get them up within hours now, don't they?
Yeah.
The women, yeah.
But back then you had to stay in the bed 2 weeks. Well, my mama had a hard time having me, and she had failed going up steps.
That's what.
So I came early.
That's what induced the labor. She found.
And she was carrying a load of wash. They had washed that day and ironed, and at my grandmother and them's, and they had a mercantile store, but they lived in the back and had big old long, tall steps up it. And so she didn't tell nobody but my daddy that night, you know, when she went in labor and had me. And I was born at the clinic, but my grandma took care of me. You can just imagine feeding a little baby with an eye dropper, how much time it took and whatever. And they couldn't find nothing to give me but whatever kind of like a pet milk they could find. I was
going to say, what did they end up?
And they put Karo syrup in it and diluted it.
Did you ever hear them say how early you were exactly?
About 7 months, a little over, just a little bit over 7 months.
I mean, really, that is a miracle.
Right. Well, they had one incubator in Meridian, but it was being used. So that was something they didn't have anywhere. So it was up to God and Grandma to save me, I guess. You know?
And she did, huh?
Yeah. And I was so little that, like I said, they put me in a shoebox. But Grandma made a pillow, my other grandmother, and she made a pillow for Mama, and they toted me on a pillow because I'd get sore. You know, I was so tiny, you couldn't handle me a lot. And so I've got pictures of me on that pillow, and they toted me around on the pillow. And my other grandmothers told me that she kept me one time for Mama to go do something, and I had a cold, and she put Vicks Save on me. And said I lost my breath, and she said, "Oh God, I've killed her," you know. And oh goodness! But they sold a hog. Grandma did. Grandma Loper did. They sold a hog and bought a crib for me and had it fixed at their house.
Wow.
Grandma Jordan took an apple box and made my bed. So that was my crib at her house, or for a long time was an apple box.
Man, thank goodness for grandmas.
Yes, thank goodness, especially my grandma Jordan. She was very special to me.
Grandma Jordan, what name did she go by?
Zeola.
They called her Zeola.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now her family is the one
they're Pews, and they came to Mississippi from Alabama, and close to where we were raised, out on 84. That's where they settled, and my granddaddy was born, and they lived there, or they came there. Buck Pugh was his name, and then my great-granddaddy, Sam Pugh, who was my grandmother's daddy, him and his wife, her name was Mary Emma, and they moved to the Deltas around the early 20s to work. And they went up there, and he died in the field in 35, I think. But they had I'm working now on how many children they did have, but my grandmother was born in 1900.
Okay.
And I know she had a sister that was born that I've got in contact with, that she was born in 1925. So poor Grandma Pugh was having children in there for 25 years.
Because your grandmother was the oldest, we think?
Yeah, my grandmother was the oldest. She was the first. And she said that was the hardest thing in her life to do, was to see her mom and daddy leave, because she didn't know how.
And why did she not go with them?
She was already married. She already had 2 children. She had my Aunt Audrey and Aunt Mildred at that time, I think, because that was in the early 20s.
So she already had a family.
She had a family. But Grandma Pugh and them went to Holly Bluff, a little place called Holly Bluff.
So they moved up there, and she basically had small children still, Grandma Pugh.
And had children
for
a while she was up there. And then after Granddaddy Pugh died, Grandma Pugh moved in with one of her older sons, and Uncle Grady. He had 2 children that she raised like they were hers, and Charles and Gracie. And then also another granddaughter, Elsie, lived with them as well as her mother. But
and y'all kind of lost
contact?
Well,
I can remember going up there. I was about 10. And I have great memories of going, and they would come sometime. And one of the times they come, I know people have never done this, but we went out and gathered sap off of the pine trees, where there'd be a little nick or something on a pine tree. It would make a gum on it.
Okay.
And we went out. I can remember Charles said he remembered doing it. They come and see us, and we went and gathered all that for Grandma Pugh, because she used it for colds and would make a salve out of it and all.
I was just looking. Holly Bluff is about 160 miles from where we are.
Yeah.
Which is not that far today, but then
it was a long trip.
Transportation was a challenge, and just the money to travel.
Well, I'm sure it was a lot different too in the 20s how they got up there and how long.
Probably an all-day trip.
Yeah. And when we went, we took my grandma up there, and like I say, it was probably around 1956, 57, something like that. But we we're going to leave that weekend, and on Friday before we left, I was being a young'un, and we were swinging in the swing and jumping off like we tell our kids not to do, but we did it when we were kids. And I fell out in the yard, and I didn't know it, but one of my little brothers probably had thrown a light bulb out, and I landed on the light bulb, my hand did, and had a bad gash. Well, my mama couldn't take care of us when we had something like that happen. She'd just go to pieces. So my Aunt Mildred, her sister, lived across the road. So we'd know to go get Aunt Mildred, and she come and took care of it and made what she called butterfly stitches and pulled it too and wrapped it up. And so that night, Daddy come in from work, and I was hurting, and so me and him stayed up late, and we watched midget wrestling. I don't know. We had done got a TV by then. And to beat it all, it was women.
Women wrestling.
I will never forget that. So I finally went on to sleep, and we got up before daylight the next morning and piled in our car and headed for the Delta. Had Grandma and me and my brother Buddy, and I know my sister Diane, and I think my brother Ray was a baby. I had one brother that hadn't been born yet. I think that was
so y'all all went, you think?
Huh?
Did Ray go too? Y'all all went together?
Yeah, we all went, and with Grandma. And so we got up there about breakfast time. And I can remember going in the little bitty house, but it was what people lived in up there. They were sharecroppers. Here come Grandma Pew, little old bitty thing. She probably wasn't 5 feet tall, but loving on us. But she had biscuits and bacon. I can remember it smelled so good, in there. And so we all eat breakfast, and so she had to go milk the cow. So my grandma said she'd go with her, and of course I followed Grandma wherever she went, and I said, well, I want to go. So we went. It was just a little piece from the house, and they had an old cow, and Grandma put hobbles on her. And if you don't know what a hobble is, you put it on a cow to keep her from kicking you. It kind of looks like handcuffs, like you put on somebody.
Oh, okay.
But
While they're milking her.
Yeah. So basically, it kind of was something made look similar to that, but
she couldn't lift her leg up.
Yeah,
to kick.
they would put it. They called it a hobble, and they would put it between her back legs where she couldn't kick you, so she milked. So Grandma P was gonna milk, and the cow was messing around. So Grandma Jordan said she'd milk the cow, so she did, and we got back home and decided we'd go to Grandma's couple of brothers, Orb and Dan, and they lived just down the road, and it had flooded. So we got out in the field and we caught little alligators.
Wow.
And put them in a tub.
Baby alligators?
Yeah, baby alligators. They were all out in the field, and it was wet. And I tried not to get my hand dirty for sure. Well, I started back, and I stepped wrong, and here I go. Both hands hit the dirt, mud. So I had to come back, and I can remember just screaming to the top of my lungs as they took the bandage off and had to redo my hand. That is etched in my memory, and I have a huge scar on my hand from it. And then that night, we went to the picture show, and it was in Holly Bluff, which wasn't very far from the house, but it was a tent. And in the tent, it had cut pieces of logs or wood blocks, and had a board across them was the seating, and dirt floors. Of course, it was a tent.
Yeah. And
they had a screen, and they had a woman playing the piano, and it was a silent movie, a cowboy movie.
Okay.
And my Grandma Pugh, like I said, she was a little bitty thing. She was just laughing, having her, I mean, she was just enjoying that, you know. And afterwards, we had a man set up outside and had homemade ice cream. Well, we were going to spend the night. Well, when we got through with the ice cream, my daddy said, okay, it's time to go. So we loaded up. We come back home that night.
Oh, y'all didn't spend the night?
We didn't spend the night, no. Daddy was ready to come back.
Okay. Well.
So we come back.
So really, your grandmother only got to visit her mama when
somebody take her. My Uncle ST would take her some, and basically it was.
So there was probably
we took her, and I mean it was a long trip.
Yeah, but there was probably long gaps of time where she was not able.
It wasn't. She might have went once, maybe twice a year. She did go on the bus. Okay. A time or two, and I just would hate to think about that you couldn't get to your mother. Not me nowadays. Of course, my mother's passed away, but the idea that your mama's always there to help you, tell you what you need to do. So Grandma had it pretty rough. And
she probably couldn't pick the phone up. I mean, she didn't probably have a phone for a time.
No, they didn't have. You didn't have anything like that.
Did they have electricity when y'all were there? You think?
Yeah, they had a
limited
light in the front room. They had beds in the front room, and then there was one little light in the kitchen. I mean, it wasn't
bathroom, outhouse.
No bathroom. You come out the door, and it was up on high steps because of it flooding. The whole house was way up off the ground. And looking at it, on the left would be the outhouse. The right would be a hand pump and a little chicken coop. And that was all there were. And all around it was cotton. Yeah. Everywhere you could see, as far as you can see, was cotton. And that little house sitting right out in the edge of it. And like I said, the barn was away from there. It was just, that was all it was in that little particular area,
Did they have a tree or anything for shade in the summertime?
I had one tree that I saw. I can remember it being one tree. You come off the road, and there was a tree and there was a house. Now you go on down the road and you would see others, but they wasn't in rows.
They were renting this home.
Yeah, they were sharecropping.
Yeah, okay.
Back then.
Did Grandma Pugh ever marry again?
No. Okay. She just raised children.
Okay.
And
then helped with her grandchildren.
And when she was in her 70s, I have a letter from her to my grandmother. I don't remember what year, but I still have it that my grandma kept, but told her to come up there. She wanted her to come, said, come up and help us pick cotton. You can make some good money. I can remember her telling her that and telling her how much she missed my grandma.
Right.
And I still have that letter, and would
they
take
all,
$1 million for it.
Even though they were living far away from one another, they all maintained a really
they
close relationship.
They wrote
and they missed
letters.
each other, huh?
Yeah. You didn't talk because nobody had a phone, But Grandma wrote letters all the time, and Grandma Pugh would write her back.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got one that she wrote and everything. And but when she was in her early 70s, and this was, I barely remember it. I may have been a teenager, but anyway, they were going to do something, and they took her to get a new dress. And while she was trying a dress on, she told them that it hurt under her arm. Well, they took her to the doctor, and she had cancer. And they did surgery, which my grandma didn't want them to do. She said she was too old, but that's just one person's opinion at that time. But anyway, they did surgery, and she passed away. She passed away from the surgery, having the surgery, and the cancer altogether. And but my Uncle Grady and all, they still stayed up there, and we lost contact with them.
Right.
After Grandma Pugh died, well, they didn't come. Only time any of them come was when my grandmother Jordan passed away. She'd had a stroke. She loved to go to sings. And her and Miss Annie Mae Pitts. Miss Annie Mae could drive. My grandma couldn't. But them two.
Your grandmother never drove?
No,
Okay.
no, never. But my grandma loved to go to sing, so Miss Annie Mae could drive, and so she'd come get grandma, and every sing that was, them two were there.
Mm-hmm.
Now she was going to the Assembly of God church. After Granddaddy died, she went back to her church that she loved, you know. And I went with her many a time too, and because I stayed with her all the time. On Saturday night, it was mandatory. She come got me, and nothing to do but I sleep with her in her feather bed, just to keep warm, because her little old house was just 4 little bitty rooms and had no bathroom, and but full of love, you know. And she'd have my egg fixed just like she knowed. You know, she pampered me. I'm gonna tell you right now, she pampered me. But she didn't have a bathroom. She had to use the chamber pot, and but she was faithful to her church, and her and Miss Annie Mae, I can still see them, you know, them two giggling like 2 little girls, you know, going and doing and everything. But Grandma played a big part in my life. And after me and Leonard married, she thought the world of Leonard.
That's what I was wondering, if you remembered her.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, and so she would go home. I'm the only one she ever went home and stayed with any of them.
Okay.
So she'd go stay. Well, she had a little bitty black and white TV. It was white.
About a foot wide, maybe not even that
Where'd she
wide.
get it?
Well, she bought it, and she was so proud of it. You see, Grandma, it was back then when Granddaddy died, you didn't have Social Security or nothing. You had a little widow's pension, but it was maybe $5 a month.
Yeah.
So Grandma would stay with people, and maybe during the week, and then we'd go. I can remember us going and getting her, and her come home for the weekend.
Like sit with people?
Yeah, she sit with people, stayed and took care of them. And she took care of Miss Cochran down at Clare for a long, long time. And but she would give Mama every month whatever whatever it would be to pay her Social Security, and Mama would send it off. And then she worked in the lunchroom at one time, and before that she worked at Mazingo School and cooked. It was there was 2 rooms, one big room where all the classes were, and all the ages was in one class. And then they had another room where Grandma cooked dinner. People would bring canned jars of whatever they had, and they'd send it, and Grandma would make a meal out of it for the children.
Wow.
She wasn't left to draw anything, so she had to work until she got a certain age, you know.
Yeah.
And Miss Annie Mae couldn't come get her that morning, so what's her name? She's a Palmer. Grandma took care of their children. She babysitted their children.
Okay.
And she was coming to get Grandma to go to church. So Grandma was in her 60s and said she couldn't get in the house. Grandma just had a wood latch on her door. That's the kind of door she had. But anyway, she could hear sounds in the house, but she couldn't get Grandma to come to the door. So she knew something was wrong, and she went to my uncle's next door and got him. Well, he broke the door down. And Grandma had everything in the house pulled out, was in her slip and everything, didn't know what was going on. She was looking for something. Well, she had had a stroke.
She was disoriented.
So, after then. But back to when she'd come to the house, she'd want to bring the TV. She said Leonard might want to watch it while he's in bed. You know, she thought the world of Leonard.
Did y'all had a TV though, huh?
Yeah, but she thought, really, she was scared to leave
one.
it. She was scared to leave her little
Right.
TV. That was,
Yeah.
she paid, that was priceless, her little TV. But anyway, and she would pamper me. I'm just telling you, she'd pamper me. But I was pregnant, and with our first daughter, Hope's mama. And so she'd tell me in the morning I'd have to get up early and fix breakfast for Leonard. So she'd say, now you just stay there, I'll get up and do it. So she'd get up, make him biscuits and everything. And my stove was like an apartment stove, but you had to take a stick, keep the oven shut because it wouldn't stay.
Yeah.
Where was this at? Where were y'all
This
living?
was up at Oakland Grove.
Oh, okay.
Daddy had bought a house, and so it was furnished with whatever we could find,
Right.
But he did fix me a bathroom.
That's
when
right,
we
yeah.
married. I did have that, thank the Lord. He put that in before we married. But anyway, Grandma was cooking his breakfast and everything, and like I said, she babied him, and so I heard her scream bloody murder. I jumped out of that bed and got in there, and I said, Grandma, what in the world? And she said, there's something in that grit box. She was fixing to cook some grits. I got it, and there was a tiny little mouse in it. It had scared her to death.
Oh,
So
I bet it
I
did.
just
Scared
took it
me.
and throwed it out in the yard.
Yeah. It was scary.
Her thing every year at Christmas, everybody had to have something. And I'd go help her buy it. When I got old enough, I'd go help her. If it was just a pair of socks, or she'd give you Mama a little rubber toy, I can remember helping her find that. But as long as she was able, she'd come stay with me a lot, and me and Leonard. And
She would call you when she's cooking in there, needing to know where something was. She'd call you Merle.
yeah, that was
She-
my mama. But
Yeah.
as you get older, you do that.
Yeah.
But sometimes she had the right family. She just, she'd call me my mama's name, But
Yeah.
So was that before her stroke or after
Yeah.
her stroke?
well, no, it was after the
Okay, so
stroke.
after the stroke, she still was able to
Some
go
yeah,
and- okay.
yeah, and she stayed with my mama, and she stayed with the others some too, but mostly with my mama. But
Was she able to work after her stroke?
no, the stroke just kind of, the doctor said it reversed who she was,
Yeah.
and she was totally different.
Yeah.
But I mean, she couldn't help it.
Yeah,
It was
it changed
something
her
that it caught-
personality.
So we couldn't leave her by herself because she would, like, you were frying something, she would apt to take her hand to pick it up. I mean,
Right.
she didn't understand. Well, she had a sister that lived in the Deltas. Her name was Lenny, and she never married. And so she came down one time after she had her stroke and stayed probably 3 months, 4 months, something
A
like
long
that.
time, yeah.
Stayed, not even 6 months, but with her, so she could stay at home.
Yeah.
But Aunt Lenny would not eat anything but vanilla wafers and milk. So that's all she ate: vanilla wafers and milk.
Her name was Lenny.
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 Aunt Lenny. She's a little bitty person, little
Vanilla
bitty
wafers
person.
and milk.
And so she stayed with her, but after that, she stayed with Mama.
Mm-hmm.
But she would tell me, she said, I just don't understand. Said she wanted to hoe one day, and she got out there in the garden, and she come in, and she was all upset. She said, I used to could hoe all day, and said, I can't hoe 5 minutes now. It just upset her that
Give
she
out.
couldn't do what she did, because
Yeah.
she was always very busy
Yeah, active
person,
Yeah.
Active person.
Because she was a widow for quite a while.
Yeah, well, I was about 4
Yeah.
when Granddaddy passed
Yeah.
away, and his name was Thomas Avery Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Granddaddy Pugh had a brother named Bernard, and he also had one named Jim, and they lived just close to where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
And Uncle Jim was a jolly person. He's all times telling something, and we'd go get him. And we went to see Aunt Audrey. We'd go by and get him because he'd want to go sometime. He liked to go with us, and he'd tell my brother and I that we could get on the oil. What do you call them, Leonard? That back then, the oil rigs. They pumped the oil.
Oh, yeah, the horse head.
Yeah, horse head type thing. But he'd tell us it was grasshoppers. And that we could get on it and ride all day, just junk like that.
And this was your grandma Pugh's brother?
Yeah. And then, let's see, it'd be her uncle. That one would be her uncle, I'm sorry. I think that was her uncle. And Uncle Bernard was her uncle. And they lived up above Beat 4. Uncle Bernard was a character. And we went up there a lot. And, he had a granddaughter named Nolan that was my age, and we were in the same class. So sometimes I would go home with her and Mama would come get me. But anyway, they made syrup and he farmed and whatever. Well, Uncle Bernard kind of liked to get happy and drink a little bit. Well, they had went to take their cotton off, and he had a bunch of boys and girls too, but at that time he had a bunch of boys, and Travis was his youngest one. And they had went to town and got the cotton money and everything. Well, his wife, Aunt Lillian, when they drove up, she, of course, come out to see what they'd made,
Right.
Well, when she saw he couldn't walk,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
she really, Mama said she went over him from head to toe like a cop searching you. I mean, she was hunting that chick.
She frisked
Yeah,
him.
she was just knew it just all got wasted. But Travis said, "Hold it, Mama, I got the check, I got the money, I got the money." Anyway, so I did know him, Granddaddy Pugh's brother, and then he had a sister. It was over in Alabama, and Leonard and I went to church at Hillcrest in Laurel after we married. We lived there a while. Well, we met Coleman Summerall, and he would be my second cousin. Him and Mama would have been first. That was Granddaddy Pugh's sister's son.
Okay.
So that was very unusual for us to meet up with somebody
Yeah, that
like
is.
that.
Well, so I know you said that you guys lost touch with the family that was in Holly Bluff, but just
Right.
recently you have been able to reconnect,
Right.
right?
My mama always wanted to, and my Aunt Mildred too. Now, Gracie, that was Uncle Grady's daughter, would call, or she wrote Grandma as long as Grandma lived. She wrote her after Grandma Pugh died. She would write her. Well, she lost touch with her, and the rest of them, and the others died, or, just different things happened through the years, and so she lost touch with our family up there. But Mama always said she said, my people. She said, I just love to know where my people are. Excuse me. So I put some pictures on old Mississippi families. I believe it's what it's called, pictures. It's nothing but pictures and people in Mississippi.
Yeah, like a Facebook group. Uh-huh.
And I put some pictures of my Grandma Pugh and my grandma and different ones, and asked them if anybody knew any of them. I would love to get in contact with some of them. And I thought, well, maybe that'll work. We tried, everything else. And so I had a girl that she said, I'm going to text you, and it was my first cousin, Homer, my Aunt Mildred's son. It was his daughter, Sissy, and I never would have dreamed that, but she lived up there. And so she wanted to know what things about it, and I told her. So that little thing went to helping me try to find somebody. So
Where does
I
she
had
live?
some replies.
Sissy.
She lives up there. She married somebody up there, but I
okay.
didn't know it, But first thing, though, I got a reply on the pictures I had put on this site, Old Mississippi Families, I think's the name of it. But I had some replies from different ones. One of them wanted to know if we were kin to Tammy Wynette, because she was a Pugh. And then finally there was one, it was the Joe Pugh, said, girls, y'all need to check this. And that was Uncle Dossie's boy, come to find out. And so I texted this lady back, and like I said, I found out it was one of Grandma's brother's daughter. Well, I was excited about that, but I still wanted to find Charles. He was the one I remember the most, growing up. And so Sissy texted me and said, I found him. She was so excited. So she gave me his number, and I called him. Well, I done more crying than I did talking. But he lives in Tennessee, but he's the only one left.
Okay.
And everyone else has passed away. But he's 83 years old. And he said he can do anything he wants to. He's in good health. And but me and him talked about how we have to go to the outhouse, how cold it was, and growing up,
Yeah.
just things, the water would be froze in the water bucket when you went to. People didn't have faucets,
Yeah.
We'd have a water bucket.
So he had
Back
lived.
then, you had a Sears Roebuck catalog
Yeah,
in the
outhouse
outhouse.
or whatever
Wasn't no toilet paper.
what magazine, or either a corn cob, corn.
Yeah.
So,
So
it
he
was.
lived in the home with your grandma. P.
Yeah, he grew
Your
up, and she was mama to him.
Where was his mother?
I don't know.
Okay.
She was not there.
Okay.
I don't.
She was just not in the picture.
She was not in the picture. I don't know when
What
she left or why she left, but long as I can remember. And he said Grandma Pugh had always lived, long as he can remember.
So she raised him. Your grandma Pugh raised.
Yeah, she
your
raised
cousin.
them.
And Charles is your first.
He'd be my second cousin.
cousin.
He was
Okay.
my mama's first cousin.
So you and Charles had memories of each other.
Yeah. I'm the only one he remembered, him and Home Earl. Now, he remembered Home Earl because Home Earl was close to his age.
And Homer Earl was your cousin.
It was my first cousin. That was my mama's sister, Aunt Mildred, that lived across the road from us. That was her sister. And my Aunt Mildred was something special, too. She was a godly woman, if there ever was one. And
So you probably helped Charles a lot, too, huh? Talk through some things and help
yeah,
y'all
we,
kind of
you
both.
know, and he sent me a tape of his daughter singing, and it was beautiful. And I told him my girls sang, and my daughters played in the church, played the piano in the church and all. So we've just been able to share back and forth. We've talked on the phone, but we've also texted.
Okay.
And he's been sending me some information on our Pugh family. Let us know where we come from. Everybody needs to know where they come from before they know where they're going.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And family is one of the most important. Well, it is. Besides knowing the Lord,
Yeah.
family is your next.
Yeah.
That and your husband, of course, but
Yes.
that's your family.
So you grew up knowing you had cousins and family
Yeah.
away, and Charles probably knew the same.
Yeah. He
So
said
that's-
he started to come several times, but he said trying to raise a family and provide, it was
Yeah.
pushed back on the burner.
Yeah, life
because you got
gets in
too
the way.
much.
Yeah.
And then he said he had thought about us, and wondered about us too,
Yeah.
what had happened to us. But Uncle Grady came when Grandma died, and then Grandma had a brother, like I said, Walter, that was in Mobile, and I remember them coming.
So Grady would have been Charles's father.
Daddy, yeah. And then Grandma had a sister that come one time that her name is Coley, and now she was born in the Deltas, I think. But anyway, somewhere I've got a picture, and she's on it, but I think she married somebody in Alabama. But I can remember them coming and eating. Grandma wanted me to be there. She always wanted me to be there when something like that was going on,
Sweet memories for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But family is important, and don't ever forget that.
And I like that you didn't give up on trying to learn and figure out where these folks were. I think that really honors the memory of your mama and her family.
I was hoping at least somebody's still alive, But Charles's sister had passed away, and then Elsie had passed away. They were close to my age, and so I remembered them.
Yeah.
And they had a hard bringing up. I mean, they didn't have the things that we have today. And I didn't either, but we had a little more than they did. But still, they turned out good.
Didn't Charles tell you they were about 10 miles from the Virginia border?
Yeah. I asked
they
him.
was way up there.
Yeah.
I asked him. I said, "How in the world did you get up in Tennessee from a Delta boy?" And he said his girls worked in a big hospital up there, and when he retired, that him and his wife decided to move up there because that's where their family was. So that's how coming to be up
Yeah, I love that.
there, So like I say, to them, family is important too, And,
I love this story. I think it brings a lot of closure to questions maybe that
it is. It does.
your mom
more than
had
you ever
and
realized.
that you had. So, well, and if you have any more thoughts about your mom's side of the family, we can talk about that. But I thought we might talk about your dad's side of the family as well.
Well, my mom and daddy met. Grandma Jordan and Mama had been to church, and they were walking home. It was I don't know, how far would it been from up there at Manor Creek to,
To y'all's house?
about a mile or two?
Yeah, probably a mile up there about.
But back then, Grandma and them didn't have a car or nothing, so they walked to church.
Which church were they going to?
They were going to Manor Creek, Assembly of God.
Okay, so your mama would go to the Assembly of God, or would she
with
go to
Grandma
both?
and they might have been going to Shady Grove, but we wound up, that's where we went to church growing up. But they probably went to Shady Grove, but they were walking home. This is unusual, though. At Shady Grove, the man that gave the land for the church wound up being Leonard's great uncle. Now, who would have believed that?
Really?
Yeah.
And I don't even know what year. It's 100 years old at least.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
my mama said she remembers him. In fact, I have a picture of him. But I knew all the Langleys. That's where they came and settled. And I knew them before I ever knew my husband.
Right.
But anyway, they were walking home, and Daddy had fixed up an old school bus. My daddy was mechanically inclined. I guess that's what you'd call it.
Yeah.
My aunt tells of when Daddy was about 10 or 12, he went and talked to this man. He had an old strip down. That's an old a car.
Mm-hmm.
And he traded him a bicycle that he had fixed up for that car because it wouldn't run. So he went home and got my Aunt Jean, and they brought a wagon, a horse and a wagon, and tied the car to it, or the strip down, and took it home. And when my daddy was sick, my Aunt Jean was telling us too,
Yeah.
So anyway, she said, you can imagine, she said, my daddy, they called my daddy Hammer.
Uh-huh.
She said, Hammer would get me in trouble all the time or get me into something. And said, but he fixed it up.
Yeah.
Drove it. That's what I'm saying. He'd been that way. And I asked Grandma one time, I said, Grandma, why do they call, what Daddy get his nickname, Hammer? She said, because he walked around with a hammer in his hand all the time, beating on something, and they called him Little Hammer, and it just began to be Hammer.
You know, me and my kids were just reading a book about John Henry. And the opening line is, John Henry was born with a hammer in his hand. And it makes me think of Papa Hammer.
Yeah.
Hansie was born with a hammer in his
Even Mom
hand.
Daddy's tombstone, we had it put Hammer because everybody, that's how everybody knew
But
him.
his name was Hans.
Hans C, and it was just a C.
C, okay.
I didn't stand for nothing.
Right.
Just my Aunt Cynthia, my granddaddy Loper's sister, named him, and we don't know why. She just put the C, but it's just Hans C. But anyway, that's how it come about. But anyway, Daddy lived at Stringford, and where we live at now. But Mom and them lived up at Beat 4, out from Beat 4 a little bit, in the Shady Grove community up there. But anyway, so Daddy had that old bus. They come by and stopped and asked him if they want to ride. So
And this was on a Sunday?
I guess it was. They were coming from church.
I wonder
Grandma
why he
said.
was out riding around just...
Probably, It's
Y'all,
like a
y'all
young,
had a man in your church at Shady Grove. You call him Sleepy?
the little sleepy man.
Did he sleep a lot? Is that why?
Yeah, when we were growing up.
Isn't that one of the 7 dwarves?
Yeah, but he would come and he would bring this man with him, the preacher. I'll think of his name in a minute, but he would come and preach for us, and his wife was bedridden, so somebody stayed with her. So he got Mr. Stevens, I think that was his name, to come with him. But anyway, he'd set up in church with his head down and sleep, and then 99% of the time he'd wind up going home with us for dinner, because back then when you had preacher come, he went home with somebody for dinner. Well, if it wasn't us, it was Aunt Mildred, or it was Miss Floyd Pitts's. I mean, they were just certain ladies in the church, but 99% of the time he'd come to our house. Well, after they would eat, they would Sleepy Man would go sit on the porch, and he'd go sleep. So us kids named him the Sleepy Man. So you come up with all kind of things growing up
People
like
in your
that.
childhood.
so that you remembered. It was good to.
Well, let's get back
childhood.
to the side of the road.
Yeah.
To Papa Hammer.
Okay, so they picked him up.
Did they know him at
No.
that point? Okay.
But I guess he didn't look
Yeah.
like he was, he was harmless.
Yeah.
So anyway, he takes her down to their house, and it was right off the road of 84, and big old house, one like people used to build, but it had a porch across the front.
Mm-hmm.
But the steps were on the end. It wasn't at the front; they were on the end. But it had a circle drive at that time. Highway 84 wasn't where it is now. It was a dirt road that you could turn off in front of the church if you wanted to and go around and come off the old highway. He brought them home. And so when they got out, Mama borrowed his comb to comb her hair because the windows was down and it messed her hair up. Well, I'd give Daddy a chance to ask her if she'd go with him to the movie or something, you know. So anyway, so Daddy, that's when he met Mama, how they met. And they dated, I don't know how long, but probably 6 months or more before they got married. But
How close in age were they?
they were both 18.
Okay, they were around the same age.
They were about 18 when they got married. They went to Brother Bill Street. He was a Church of God minister. He married them.
Okay.
And
Where did they get married?
at his house, it was
Okay.
there at Beat 4 School, where you're going towards what they call Rattlesnake Fort.
Mm-hmm.
But he lived in a little wood house right there, right off the road, for a long, long time.
Okay. And they just went to his house?
Yeah, they went there and got married, and then they moved into. There was a little house. My grandma and granddaddy didn't own the land there, or they worked on it, and it was a mercantile store, and they lived there when Mama fell and I was born. They were living there and in the back of it. But the mercantile is different than what we have now. You would tell somebody what you want, and they would get it off the shelf. You didn't go get it yourself.
Okay.
It's different, you know. But there was a little house above it that my granddaddy later used for people to live in to help him on the farm.
Yeah.
And so they lived in one side of it when they married. But when I was born, my mama refused to go back because she said they was rats big as I was. And she wasn't near about going to take me back up there. So we stayed with my grandma, and there was a house. I have a picture of it that was beside. By then, my grandma and them had bought the land and everything. But there was a building that once was a store.
Mm-hmm.
It's where the store is now that my grandparents built.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the Stringford community. But there was a big house there, and at one time when my grandmother was a young woman, her daddy had a store in it, and she worked in it. And there was a mill house across the road, so it was just, it was kind of like the hub of the community right in there. But they tore the house down and built our house on the highway, and it was built just like my grandma and granddaddy's house. And theirs was a Sears Roebuck house. They ordered it from Sears and Roebuck, or the Mr. Cooley did, the one that they bought it from and had it built. But Mom and them had theirs built, and so I guess I don't remember not living anywhere but then. But Mama said that they moved to Quitman, I think she said, and Daddy worked for some man there, and she was telling me said she'd go to this lady's house to wash clothes because she didn't have water. And the lady wound up and made Mama had an apple box that she put me in to take me wherever we went. Didn't have carriers and nothing like that. So said the next time she went, the lady had fixed one so Mama wouldn't have to drag the apple box.
I don't think I ever knew they lived in the Quitman area.
I think it was Quitman, but Daddy worked for a man there for a while. But then after they built the house and we moved into it, like I say, I don't remember not living there, so it had to be. I was pretty real young when we built.
That was your first home.
And but I do remember sitting on the back steps with my mama crying, and me crying with her, because she just got she had so many children right in a row, and the doctors told my daddy that if she had another one at this time, they'd kill her because she lost a baby in between me and my brother.
Yeah.
And I was born in July. The baby that died was born in next June, and the next April my brother was born. So her body just couldn't take it, So it was 4 years before the others were born. And I can understand myself now why she was crying.
Anybody with children can probably
Especially
relate.
if you've lost a baby in between all that. So, Mama was a strong woman.
The baby that she was had after you was full term, right?
Well, it was an 8-month baby, they call it, but it had a water head.
Okay.
And I think she said it lived a day and a night.
Okay.
And passed away. And they never named it. They just where it just says Baby Loper. I don't know why they didn't even give him a name, but it's a little boy.
So both of her first 2 deliveries were traumatic.
Yeah.
So she probably did.
Yeah. And anyway, my daddy was a good daddy. I got pictures when I was little. Mama said he'd put my bottle in his back pocket and me on his hip and away he'd go,
So he didn't mind taking you places.
No, he was proud of, I was first great grandchild on my grandma's side.
Okay.
And so she said everybody in Stringford just thought the world, I was the first one. So, and Grandma would make all my clothes.
This is your
growing
dad's,
up.
your
my
dad's
daddy's mama, my Grandma Loper.
What was her name?
Her name, Kate. Everybody called her Miss Kate.
Okay.
Her name was Catherine.
Yeah.
But everybody said Miss Kate. That's all. Everybody, and my granddaddy was Mr. Mance.
Yeah.
His name was Mance Loper.
Okay.
My Kaylee named me, and I never figured that one out. You know why?
Really?
She let Mama let her name, but she did.
Very involved, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Aunt Kaylee picked out your name?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She picked it out. I don't know where she got it from. See, Aunt Jean's name was Cynthia Eugene.
Okay.
So, but they called her Jean. So I don't know why that's just the way it was back then, And but most of growing up, my siblings and all called me Sis.
Okay.
Or Sissy.
Yeah, and you were the oldest, huh?
I'm the oldest, and my baby brother was born when I believe I was 11, and my mama was real sick, and so I raised him. I took care of him, and my mama had surgery and was in a bed a long time, and so I took care of him that first year most all the time. When I'd come in from school, that was my job, and in the summertime, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody had a job. You didn't.
That's right.
Didn't matter how old you were. You was old enough to do something.
That's right. And you guys were all born at the clinic, the siblings?
No, Jamie was born at Wayne General.
Okay.
And I think maybe Ray was. Diane could have been, but I know me and Buddy were born at the clinic, Dr. Merriman's clinic.
In Waynesboro?
Uh-huh.
Clinic? Okay.
And he had a midwife, and her name was Mary. And when I was about 9, I guess, me and Mama were in town, and we saw her. Mama stopped, and we talked to her, and she just could not believe. She said, "You were so tiny," said, "I didn't think you'd ever make it."
So y'all lived in that house on the highway for how long?
Until they tore it down. The highway come through and got
what
our
was
house.
that circumstance?
But we was talking about Daddy, but he stumped. That's where you would go in the woods. There used to be stumps. That's where trees had been cut and turned into lightered pine trees. And they worked around here, and they worked in Jay, Florida. Yeah. And you take dynamite and dig a hole down under that, put that dynamite and blow it. It'd blow that stump up in pieces.
Yeah.
And
that's where they could load it. They had to load them by hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they worked, I remember, in Jay, Florida for a long time. And I remember Daddy, he'd leave before daylight and get in after dark. I mean, it was long, because that was a pretty good piece. But
So he would come home every night, though?
And he had a man that worked with him.
That sounds dangerous, too, doing that.
Yeah.
They called him Cush, but it wasn't his name. I do know his name, but I can't think of it. But that's all we ever called him. But he would come to the house at 4 o'clock, come in the house and build a fire. and then he would wait for Daddy to eat breakfast for him to leave. But he worked with Daddy for a long
So they would
time.
drive to Florida?
They would drive to wherever Jay, Florida is.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jay, Florida's pretty good ways down there.
Somewhere in, and that's where they were stumping the last time Daddy stumped. And Daddy's one of his cousins, which, like I say, I knew his family before I knew him. He had what was his, Jew Langley. He also went with them. There was several of them that they went down there and done the stumping. Then they'd haul it up, though, all the way to Laurel.
Okay.
And
They'd go to Hattiesburg to that.
what was the name of it?
What was
What,
the name of it?
Hercules?
Hercules, yeah.
Oh, the Hercules plant?
Yeah, and they would do, I guess they got, what did they get out of it? Turpentine?
Yeah.
Turpentine, yeah.
You wonder why they had to travel all the way to Florida to do that.
I don't know.
That was probably that. You don't even find stumps no more.
Yeah.
There ain't no such thing.
Well, that was some long leaf timber, and they don't have
A certain
that
kind
now.
of wood
Yeah.
that they wanted.
It's
Okay.
what we'd say lighter is that
Yeah.
we'd
Yeah,
start
that's
a
where
fire
lighter
with,
come
but
from.
they call it stumping. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
he did. Had big old long truck, and they'd put it on it, and he'd bring it over there, And I can remember us going with Daddy to go get his check, and that was a big deal to go over there. But one thing for sure, didn't matter what happened or whatever. When it was Sunday, we wound up at Grandma and Granddaddy's. I don't care what happened. We wound up there sometime during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But, that was fine. Yeah, his parents. And moment he'd walk in the door, he'd go to the refrigerator. Because my grandma was a good cook, and she always had something sweet cooked. But I remember going with him and Granddaddy to get dynamite one time. And I was kind of scared, as I didn't know no different. We got that dynamite, I was afraid,
Yeah.
And my mama whooped me one time with a piece of dynamite. I don't even know what I'd done. But anyway, we were out there, and Daddy had some dynamite sitting in a box out there at the edge of the yard. When Mama went to whoop you, I hate to say this, but I was the same way. She grabbed whatever was handy, and I didn't know you had to have fuses or
You had
something.
to have a
Cap to go with it for it to blow up.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But
You
anyway,
didn't
I
know
didn't know that. And so she picks that stick up and go to. Well, I went to screaming bloody murder because I thought I was gonna blow up. My daddy heard me. Here he come. Merle, don't do that. She ain't gonna do it no more. I know she ain't, because he always saved me. He come save me. He saved me a lot of times. But now Mama believed in whooping, and my daddy was a good-hearted person. Then after he quit stumping, he started hauling pulpwood, and he worked, I guess, about 20 black men that worked with him for years and
The
years.
wood's full of people.
And then he built a shop there beside our house. And so he would do that stumping, and then he'd work on people's vehicles there. And then he built a little bitty store. He worked about 20 men, and I can still see them coming. And we had one that his wife died in childbirth, I remember, and she used to come and help Mama, so we knew her. And anyway, she died having a baby in Charity Hospital. Well, he comes, I can see him now, come to our house and said, Mr. Hansey, he said, I need to borrow some money. He said, my wife has died and I need it to bury her. And so my daddy give him some money. And they would numerous times that happened. And so we used to say, well, Daddy buried most of them, I mean, he
would help pay their burial
but
fees.
they'd pay him back,
Right.
and pay him. And we had a black man who stayed with us. He stayed at the shop, and he'd help Daddy in the shop, and his name was Studebaker Heidelberg. I will never forget that. And on Saturday, Daddy let him off early. He'd come to the house and go to the well and get water and take him a bath. And he had him a flashy suit that he would wear. He'd get all dressed up and he'd be gone all weekend. Well, he was up there in a joint, got an altercation, and this man killed him.
Mm.
And that night, it was on in the morning, we had a telephone by then, and it was in my room. And I heard somebody knocking on the door, and Daddy gets up. His name was Cooley. His last name was Cooley. And he said, Mr. Hansey, he said, I need to call the law. He says, I killed Studebaker. That's what he told him. He said it was self-defense. So said he had a knife fixing to get me. So he come in my room. You can imagine, I'm sleeping there, and he calls the sheriff and tells him he's out here and where he's at. And he said, I'll be right here. And so in a little while, him and Daddy sat on the porch, and the law come got him, but they didn't do nothing because it was self-defense.
Wow.
But, that's just one of the instances, that things happen, there's a lot of them, but...
Didn't y'all have like a cow or something? I remember a story.
We raised a pig one time and raised a cow called Sancho.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
What
right.
was What about Sancho?
Okay, my granddaddy had a lot of cows,
Mm-hmm.
and he had this little calf born, and the cow wouldn't take it. So we brought it home, me and Buddy, my oldest brother. We held him in the back of the pickup. Daddy had a little old pickup. And we held him in that pickup till we got him home, got him out. Well, we fed him with a bottle, and we played with him. And every evening we'd come in and play, and he would follow us, and do all that. And we come home one evening, and we couldn't find him, and we eat supper. And after supper, my daddy said, "Well, how was your supper?" And we said, "Good." He said, "Well, that was Sancho," and Mama had to give all that meat away because we wouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. I've always heard that. Don't ever name.
No,
those
yeah.
cows.
Well, we had seen on Disney the Sancho the long steer, and that's how come us to name him.
So he was like a pet.
He was a pet. He absolutely was a pet. I had a pig one time, and I raised it, and it'd follow me around. Well, wound up, it went somewhere too. And
I guess that's life, huh?
yeah. And I love chickens, and we'd have them, and my brother and I would feed the cows, and that was our job. And so it was up from the house, and we had a corn crib, and it was open, and we'd throw the corn out for the cows. Well, we had this old cow that her calf had died, and she was so mean. And me and Buddy would try to sneak up to go feed them because they'd come, and that thing would run us. And so we kept telling Daddy, we told Mama. So finally, she just told Daddy, said, "You're going to have to go feed them cows. I'm not going to send them young'uns no more. That cow's crazy." Well, he was gone about 15, 20 minutes. Next, he come back to the house. He got the truck. He went up there. He loaded that cow, and he took her off. And so, it had him. He had to go up there, but she put him behind a tree. She run him, too, behind a tree.
So he saw.
But, yeah, she was running us one day. We had went up there. Mama had went with us, and she was doing it. Mama had a corn cob. She grabbed that corn cob and throwed it at that cow and hit him right between the eyes. And that cow just come like something on brakes, just slid and stopped when that happened. And that's when she told Daddy he had to do something
with that cow, huh?
Yeah, with that cow. And but we didn't name that cow. But yeah, we had all kind of animals growing up and since then. But my granddaddy Loper farmed, and Grandma Loper run a store, and she sewed then on the side. She was a jack of all trades.
That's right.
And then she cooked dinner and breakfast every single day. She had a kitchen in the store. So she made all my clothes, and nobody never knew that because they looked like something you bought out of the store. She was such a good seamstress, you know.
Was that their primary income, that store?
Yeah, and
Okay.
Granddaddy farming.
Okay.
And the store is still there. The building is still there. A lot of memories in that store because when we would go to see Grandma and Granddaddy, I'd say 90% of the time, they would be at the store. And so, you know, we would visit there. And they had a wood stove in it because that was the only heat, and it was cold.
Yeah.
But
how long do you think they operated that store?
oh, I don't. Well, they quit after I married. Probably that was in '65. I'd say they probably, as far as closed their business part of it, in 66, 67.
Okay. And then was it just vacant for a while?
Yeah, different people run. Well, one lady, they opened the store back up for a while, and then it didn't work out, and then some people rented it and lived in it, you know, like a apartment type thing. But they didn't have a bathroom, but they lived in it. And then, I don't know what year it was, Leonard might know. I opened it up and had a shop in it, and then we built a little building on the side, or bought it and fixed it up and had a hamburger place.
Yeah.
And my mama had flowers, built her a greenhouse around the store, and she had flowers, so it was booming. I mean, we had people everywhere come, you know, around. Had a good business there, you know.
How long did y'all do that?
Probably at least 5-6 years.
Okay.
And I had in the store part, I sewed, and we did craft shows, but anyway, we had that, and then on weekends, my daughter Donna would take care of it, and Mama, and then when Grandma Loper would come, she'd come out and help her. But she loved to come out there because she missed people, you know, being in the store so many. If you wanted to know something, you went to the store.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it was the news center, the hub of the community.
I think I have a vague memory, maybe. I remember the cash register.
Yeah.
That big
and
cash
I have
register.
the weight where you weighed flour on. I have that, yeah.
So that building was always in use pretty much,
Yes.
whether it was a store or...
Well, at one time before after I had my shop, we started a church.
Yeah.
And it started in the store.
That's
so the
right.
store has been a lot of things.
What was it called through the years? Do you know?
Loper's store.
Even when y'all had it, did y'all call it that or something else?
I called it Gloria's.
Okay.
And then when we started the church, it was Crossroads Baptist Church because it's at the crossroads, but everybody in the church was at a crossroads in their life. That's why. They had the back feed room, they call it, and when it got real cold, they put a bed back there to save going to the house. Because the house was behind the store. And it smelled like feed in there all the time. You know, I loved the scent, the big feed, you know. And when I was growing up, like I said, Grandma made my clothes, but the feed was back there, and she'd take a scrap, because they used to come in colors. You'd make clothes out of them, and she'd give Granddaddy a scrap of something she wanted for him to try to find when he went to get feed. And so it took 4 feed sacks to make a dress. And so a lot of my dresses were made out of the feed sacks.
Wow.
But they were beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful colors and whatever. And like I said, she was just an expert seamstress, you know. And she
Really, like you said, jack of all trades,
yeah,
huh?
yeah. And she taught Sunday school. They went to the Methodist church as long as it was there, you know, and one week the Methodists would have church. Next week the Baptists would have church.
In one building, right?
One
they
building,
shared the
same
building.
And
they're gonna be separated in heaven, I guess.
Have to
No.
rotate out.
Yeah.
And in fact, our church went there. The people that were left there came and asked us would we like to have their building. So that's where we went after the church started in the store, was to the old Methodist church.
Okay.
And so we had church there for, I don't know how long it was before we built the church.
We built it in 81,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
81.
Yeah.
Well, that building is the one where the Methodists and the Baptists would rotate. It's
It's a lodge.
lodge now, yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, they used to meet then too. They were upstairs. So it was,
so
They used to be, the whole thing was in one place.
that's
yeah.
very interesting
They had a
to me.
side door.
So the
they-
Masons would meet upstairs.
Yeah.
There was a door on the side, and there's stairs, and they'd go up there.
So it had
They'd
a
have
separate-
their meeting, yeah, separate. And down on the bottom was the church part.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And we didn't have a bathroom. There wasn't a bathroom in it, and it was just one. It was open, but it was kind of like made like a U with the main part in the curve of the U. I mean, the sanctuary part, but then the two little in the back, we used them as Sunday school, but Sunday school rooms. We put these folding doors
Yeah.
where we could close them off, and then some people donated a trailer, and we put it beside it.
Okay.
And then the men dug a hole and put a
Me and Bob Cranford did.
put a
Put a 55-gallon
Yeah.
barrel, cut the top out of it,
Okay.
made a
that-
bathroom.
yeah, and there was a room under the stairs of where they went to the lodge, and we put a little put a commode in it. Is what we
Okay.
put, and then the Sunday school room started being in the trailer out there. You know,
I drove a vacuum truck with, it soaks up water and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd come by there about every 2 weeks. I had to work 7 days a week.
Uh-huh.
I'd pull what was in it out.
Okay.
Get
Well, that was a good ministry to the church, huh?
Yeah.
I just keep thinking about how interesting it is that the Masons had a lodge all the way out in Stringford.
it was there for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old church.
They all got so old they couldn't go up them stairs, and they meeting in the bottom
Yeah,
now.
bottom now. But that church was there. My granddaddy Cooley helped build the church. So it's been there 100-something years.
So
There
that
used to be
building.
a high school there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where it's at was the high school or the whole school.
Yeah.
Now I do know that they closed that school the year I started school. So it was in about 52,
Mm-hmm.
and some went to Clara and some went to Beat 4.
Okay.
And but I can remember I would go visit
Mm-hmm.
and go to the school and
Yeah.
visit, And Grandma said, "Well, this is how long I know it's been said that when Aunt Kaylee was 4 or 5 years old, that she would go to school, and she said that she learned she'd go to the first grade. I mean, she'd go to school. She'd just walk down there and go to school, and wound up being a school teacher,
Yeah.
But
they let her come in there.
yeah, but and Grandma and Granddaddy, where the store is now, they used to, when Daddy was little, they lived across the road. They had a store, and the feed mill, the old mill house is behind it. That building is still there.
Well, back then they'd grind corn,
Yeah.
meal, and all kinds
Right.
of stuff.
Well, that was always the mill house, but
Yeah.
there was a store in front of it, and that Granddaddy would change tires and fix stuff. So he was always mechanically inclined.
So this
too,
was all happening in Stringford, though.
Yeah,
Huh? It was
yeah.
a busy little community.
Right. And Daddy was born. Granddaddy and them were off he was working for the lumber company, and they were in these little box cars.
Camp cars.
Camp cars, yeah. It was like they would pull on the railroad, and that's where Daddy and I think Aunt Kaylee was born there too. That's where they were living.
In
when
a
they
camp car?
Camp car.
Wow.
And then Granddaddy, he worked for Mr. Forrest Arrington and lived in a house, and he worked for. How many cows was it, Leonard, you had that you got every people used to do?
Like when you'd work for 'em.
Every fifth or something other.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was like every fifth calf born, whatever,
was
you
yours?
got it. It was yours. And that's how Granddaddy got his cow
cows.
herd started.
He earned them like from.
And Grandma, where we live at now, just right past the house, used to be a big overflowing well. You could stand up under it. It was so big. And people would come and wash their clothes and get water and everything. And Grandma and them lived out there, and that well was a dug well. People, they had a curb around it, and then later on they put a pipe, and then you could get up under it. But Grandma said that when they first married and lived there, that the bears would come and they'd put potato peelings, you just drop them because you had big cracks in the floor, and said that they'd put their hands up wanting more.
Under their house?
Under their house,
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, it was wild back then, up in,
Yeah.
But
The bears would come get under their house?
and do their fingers up wanting more.
In Wayne County?
They used to be bears, and they were a panther. Used to be a black panther that people would say, and Granddaddy said it was true, and you could hear it scream. It sounded like a woman screaming that would go through, and I have heard it. I have heard it.
Yeah.
And but you could hear it. But I mean, this was out in Stringford was in the wilderness because we were at the edge of the DeSoto Forest, and it used to be, open range, which meant you could let your animals, go anywhere they wanted to. You didn't have fences. It used to be open range. And Granddaddy had a horn that was made out of a cow's horn. But he could blow that thing, and they would come out of the woodworks. They'd come from every direction. In the evening, he'd call his animals up.
Wow.
And hogs and cows, here they'd come, coming out of the woods and whatever. And he would feed them all, or, a little bit or something, so they would come up and he could keep up with them. Granddaddy had he always had a dog with him at all times. And most of the time it was, what kind of shepherd was it? English shepherd. He had those. That was his main kind of dog. But he had this dog, though, that he was a Brennel looking. But he called him Preacher. And so Granddaddy was off, and he finally put the cows that began to be where you had to pin them up. But Granddaddy would take the government had land that was fenced in that they would rent you to put your cows in. So Granddaddy would. He had so many that he would drive them down there and put them in down our government woods. Well, he'd go check on them, and he had an old red apple pickup. It was apple red. And I learned to drive it too. But anyway, he'd just blow the horn, and when he did, the cows would come. They were, he'd just blow the horn on the truck after that. And they would come up. And, well, he had one that didn't come up. So this particular time, she didn't come up, so he went hunting her. Well, as he started to step over a big old log, that dog knocked him down and wouldn't let him. Well, he knew something had to be wrong because, So he goes around it, and when he gets around it, he sees what happened. There was a big rattlesnake laying there, and he would have stepped on him. So that dog saved him then.
Yeah.
And then later on, had a cow went crazy, and that cow got after Granddaddy. Well, that dog intervened, but when he did, that cow ripped his side open. And Grandma sewed him up with a clear fishing string. She sewed him up, and he made it. But he was Granddaddy's constant companion.
That is so interesting.
And Granddaddy had a horse. Well, it was really, he was called Shorty. And I have pictures, and Granddaddy was big on horses. He rode horses. When they were kids, that's why they kept up with everything. And I have a picture of him on his horse, him and his brother. But he had got it for Uncle Faye, but Uncle Faye didn't fool with it. But we'd go with him to feed it, and he'd make him do tricks. He'd say, how many ears of corn you want? And he'd take his foot and do so many,
Yeah.
or whatever. And he'd say, "Are you a good boy?" And he'd shake his head. He wasn't. And he said, "But do you want something to eat? Or are you a good boy?" And he'd do his head, "Yeah, I mean, it was.
Yeah.
He loved them, and we took him home. My brother and them decided they wanted to ride him, so Granddaddy let them have him. They brought him home. And I wanted to ride so bad, but I never could ride. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get up there. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't ride a bicycle.
It's kind of scary.
Well, I had my
Balancing.
equilibrium. I guess being premature, I've always had problems with
Yeah.
it. But anyway, so
Well-
we kept him for a long time, and they called him Shorty.
Your grandpa Loper, when would he have been born?
He was born, he was born 1900.
Okay.
And Grandma was born in 1905,
Okay.
I think. But Granddaddy said he saw Grandma when Grandma was about 12, I think. He said he told his friend, he said, "I'm going to marry that girl." And so
Wow.
years later he did, But he'd tell me, he said, "Well, they used to tell me I was pretty good looking. I was handsome." And I'd say, "Well, Granddaddy, you still handsome,
Yeah. And
like that.
he and your grandmother lived to be on in age, huh? Or
Well, Grandma lived old to be 80-something. She lived longer than he did,
Yeah.
but he was probably close to 80
Yeah.
when he died,
Yeah.
He was a hoot now. He was a hoot. Granddaddy had come from a big family, and he had a brother. I'm trying to think of his name now. But he had a brother that went missing, never found him. But I'll think of his name in a minute. But anyway, he was into all kind of stuff. And so he come to the house, to Granddaddy's, and wanted to borrow his truck. My Uncle Fay was telling me this. I'd always heard it, but Uncle Fay said he seen it. So he told me about it. And said that he borrowed Granddaddy's truck. Now, this was probably in the 40s, at least the 40s.
Probably so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And borrowed his truck. Well, when he brought it back, he didn't have the same tires on it. He had sold the tires off the truck and put some bad ones on it. And so my granddaddy got mad. Well, back in that time, I never heard my granddaddy curse or anything like that, because when my brother come along, he said some choice words, and my brother repeated them. And he said that was the end of that. So we never heard him curse, never. But when my daddy was growing up, he cursed real bad. Anyway, said he cursed him out and said a few choice things. And Uncle Fay said he was standing there and said he told him, he said, "Now, you leave," and said, "Don't you never come back." Said, "This is enough, And said, Uncle Fay said he followed him all the way to where Bull Branch is. It's down the road there. But watched him leave, and he said that was the last time they seen him. He went up north. He was a barber by trade, but he liked to drink. But he went up there, and my Aunt Cynthia, my granddaddy's sister, got a letter from him and told him he was coming back. Said he's in his trunk, and that he was coming home, but he never come home.
and they never
Never knew what happened to him. And this is unusual. Leonard, my granddaddy's oldest sister, which I never knew her. I've not even been finding. She married a Langley. So
small world.
that's something, ain't it? Yeah. And then one of his sisters, May, married a Jordan. So, you just never know if you go to look in your family, especially if you're in an area like we all, you find you're kin to everybody.
Yeah.
Don't look too close.
No, you'll be, yeah. But Granddaddy would go to town, and every time he'd go to town, he'd stop by, and he'd give us a nickel, because he knew we'd go to the store and get us a drink up the road, to Clyde's. And we didn't ever have to get on the road. We'd leave our house and walk down the side of the road. It was so busy, and we had a big square cupboard that we would just go through that cupboard and get on the other side of the road, so we didn't ever have to
Nice.
and go up the bank and all. And violence used to bloom, and when we'd come back from going to the store, Mom would give us a quarter. we'd be worked in the yard all day long, raking and whatever. We'd go you could get 6 drinks, Cokes. And so we'd get that, and we'd come back and we'd pick her a bouquet of violets off that hill. I can remember how pretty it was. And then come back, then we'd all sit on the porch and drank it. And we'd go to the store, though. Clyde's boy had polio, and it was just above our house. And when we'd go, you'd see him. His name was Sandy. He'd be out there with a candy bar in one hand and a big chunk of clay in the other, and he'd alternate bites.
What?
Yeah. He'd eat that clay
goodness.
dirt. I guess Mama always said that you were lacking something, But
Deficient.
Mama said when I was little, I ate dirt too. But said my grandma said every kid had to have an acre of dirt, at some time in their life.
So you two were growing up just down the road from each other, huh? And didn't even really realize it.
Who,
You
Daddy?
and- yeah. Mhm.
Well, he was living at Sandersville. It was a long way out. But
Yeah.
his family, and he didn't really know
Yeah.
them.
But really, in reality, that's not too far away.
No,
you
no,
know.
no.
Yeah,
Well, in that time period,
It
it
was,
was
yeah.
a long way away. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You didn't know anybody like
That's
that.
right.
But his family was originally from Wayne County.
Yeah.
They were raised there just above where we
Yeah.
were, but he didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, see, his daddy had moved, and they were in Jones County, so he didn't know it. but
Yeah.
anyway, so we you just found out a lot of stuff, didn't we, Dad?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Yeah, we've been through a lot of stuff, but
Oh,
it's
my
all been a
gosh,
good
that's right.
journey.
Well,
A
we're
lot of memories.
We're coming up on 2 hours.
Oh, that's all right. There's just plenty left in there.
Well, was there a story you used to tell, or there was somebody that would go down and wash their clothes? Something about the Indians?
Well, now, Grandma Loper was a coolie,
Uh-huh.
and she said that her mama, when her mama was growing up, she said the Indians lived in what they call Bankston Town. Well, they were all where we lived, but her grandparents were Bankstons, and they lived in a little community just below us. They called Bankston Town, but there was a creek there where they washed their clothes. But anyway, Grandma and them would go play, and she said they'd find arrowheads everywhere. But she said there was an Indian mound there right close to where that was.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, where Leonard's family was, up where we were raised, that used to be Indian territory, and Indians owned that,
Yeah.
too, at one time. Mama Cooley is what they called her. That's my Grandma Loper's mama. She was a coolie. And Grandma Loper's mama was Coley Bankston. And she said that she remembers the Indians coming to their house and bringing little baskets full of stuff wanting to trade,
Really? Well, and that's not that long ago,
No.
you know,
No, it really
when
not.
you think about it in terms
Well,
of...
the Langleys, the Pughs, and what's the other family? The Jordans, all of them came into Mississippi around 1850. All of them came out of Alabama at that time.
Yeah.
And so they were all hunting work. I mean, that's the way it was back then, And
Yeah.
most of them worked in the cutting wood.
Right.
I have a picture that Leonard found, and it's real interesting. It's got the camp cars on it where people would live. They would make a rail, like the dummy lines. I keep telling you about that one at
Yeah.
your mama's. They would, in fact, there was one down there that came from Laurel all the way to Granddaddy, to Pawpaw Cooley's, and he logged for that Lindsay company. They made the wagons, and he had oxen that pulled his, and it'd be full of logs,
Right.
and they'd bring it to a railhead that was close to where your mom and daddy lives, and they'd put them on the train and take them back to Laurel. So, they would lay lines into the
Yeah.
woods. It'd be a big track of timber, and they'd bring those cars in. They'd have one, it would be where they cooked,
Yeah.
and then people would live in the others. But this picture's got their horses on it. It's just really, it just shows you a
Yeah.
lot of what you know happened. They would
Yeah.
clear cut it, but it was showing the big timber and how they live. But
Just kind of a day in the life.
it's just amazing.
I
to
think
me.
they call that company Gilchrist. Lumber
probably.
Company.
But
Gilchrist?
They made the Lindsay wagons back then.
You know, we have I help at the Y in downtown, and
Yeah.
one of our rooms is called the Gilchrist room because Mrs. Gilchrist was one of the founding members of the Y.
They started the mill.
Yeah, and because we're coming up on the Y was founded in 1914,
Mm-hmm.
and the building that we're in was finished in 1924. So all that kind of
Works, yeah.
the timeline adds up. But Mrs. Gilchrist was one of the women that helped found that organization.
Well,
and
Papa Cooley worked a lot of men, and they would go in and cut the timber, and they'd put the rails, you know, to wherever they.
and they probably
had-
used that Lindsay wagon. Or
Yeah, they did.
mhm.
Yeah. Grandma used to have pictures. I don't whatever happened to them. It showed they had some oxens pulling
Yeah.
the loads.
Yeah.
And Grandma Loper's brother, she had a brother that got killed in the log woods. The log coming loose fell on him, just a young man, and killed him in the log woods. But that was not uncommon because
That was your
That
grandma Loper's brother.
brother, a younger brother. But Papa Cooley, that's all he ever did was do that. You know, it provided a lot of jobs for
Yeah.
a lot of people. You know, but there where you go into where your mama's is, there's what they call it a dummy line, and it didn't really. It just went to there to pick up the logs. You know,
Oh, yeah.
You know the road just right here
I saw that
It's
dummy
Dummy Line
line.
Road.
I
Yeah.
wondered if that was probably one
somehow.
there.
I'm
but
sure.
they would raise it up. You could tell where it's at
Yeah.
because they make it taller,
Mm-hmm.
and you could see them. They were some around where
Yeah.
we lived, you know.
We've been going through some of the documents about the YWCO in downtown, getting ready for just the 100-year anniversary.
Yeah.
But you know, did y'all ever go to the swimming pool that was
No,
down?
I always
below?
heard it was there, but I
Okay.
never did go.
I've only ever seen pictures of it, but there's some entries of them writing about building in downtown. Apparently, there's a lot of natural springs, or there is a
Yeah.
natural spring maybe that runs through downtown, and there's an issue there with flooding ever so often. But anyway, there's a passage in there that talked about when they were building that swimming pool, they struck quicksand
Oh no,
under that building
I wouldn't
in
doubt
downtown Laurel,
I wouldn't doubt it.
and they had to deal with the quicksand. But
Yeah.
all of those buildings in downtown Laurel, you know, would have been being built during this time too. The lumber industry
Right,
was
absolutely.
really probably at its
Well, Granddaddy
height.
Loper said he could remember as a kid, you know, going to Laurel, and it was just beginning.
yeah.
Well, you know, Grandma and Granddaddy had an artesian well behind their house.
Yes, I have a memory of that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. When they bought that house, they bought it from Mr. Cooley. His mama, they had a little store there where I told you they tore our house down, used our house. Well, there was a little store out there, and he run it. Well, his mama lived with him, and they had to go to the outside toilet if they went at night. Well, she got up in the night and went, and it was cold, and she had a scarf she put on her head, and she was hard of hearing. Well, she went to the bathroom. Well, Mr. Cooley got upset because some people had come around that was not normal people that come around, and he had it in his mind that there might be somebody going to rob him, you know. I mean, that's something. You got a little store, you have to. Well, when his mama started back into the house on the back, you remember those high steps in the back? He hollered and said, "Who is it?" Because he couldn't tell. She had that. He shot his mama at the back door. And there where she died was always a dark place. And Grandma and Granddaddy always said that was where it was at. You know, they'd done it. And so we always was kind of scared of that spot.
That area.
It's still there because they built the back porch over it. So it's
Yeah,
still
I
there.
don't think I knew that. Wow.
they always had the toilets out behind the store. And anybody that was traveling or whatever, they knew where they'd stop to go to the bathroom back there because they was always there. That was the only place you could find.
I feel like a lot of these stories revolve around trying to figure out how you're going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about that too much these days.
No. I told Charles a couple of weeks ago, we were just talking, and I told him, I said, well, one thing I don't miss is having to go outside to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't have an outhouse. We had behind a crib, corn crib, you know, or the smokehouse or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know why Daddy didn't never make us one, but he didn't. But anyway, he said, he was 18 years old and he could remember it. He hated to get up and have to go out and go to the outside toilet.
On cold nights like this, you know, in the
Oh,
last
yeah.
couple weeks, I would not have to.
I don't know if I'd make it nowadays. Let me tell you this, and it will.
I know y'all got to go to town,
Yeah,
don't you?
my grandma Jordan, I told you that she didn't have a bathroom, so she had a chamber pot. And so I had spent the night with her, and I was still in the bed, and she was going to go take it outside. Well, she looks out the door. Remember, she's a widow lady. She looks out. There's this old man that had been trying to get her to go with him. Of course, we didn't like him because we didn't think Grandma needed of somebody, and she didn't either. Well, here he come. And her little old house had a little old bitty porch, but only way you could shut the door was with a wooden latch on the inside. And she had one outside, but anyway, she had that chamber pot, you know, her hand to take it out. Well, he come up to the door. So here she is, puts it behind her, and waves to me to come get it. And I wouldn't come get it because I didn't like him. I didn't. And so he was wanting to know if he could give her a ride to church and all. And she told him no, that she had things she needed to do. And here she is holding that chamber pot and trying to get me to come get it, and I wouldn't do it. Well, after he left, she said, why didn't you come get this thing, you know? I said, Grandma, I wanted him to see what you had. I didn't want him to come back around. He didn't come back.
Being protective of your
Yeah,
grandmother,
yeah.
weren't you? Well,
So, you know, that was just the way it was.
Yeah.
She
Y'all
never.
want to stretch a little?
yeah. It sure doesn't feel like we've been talking this long, but we've gone over 2
There's
hours.
still
So.
plenty to tell.
Well,
Time
and
goes by
we got to
in a
get
hurry,
y'all
though.
together too to just talk about. We got to talk about the married years too,
yeah,
huh?
that's right. We've been Daddy's had a
know.
We've had a ride with Daddy.
I'm telling
So
you.
that'll maybe be our next
Yeah.
session, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
But
so.
it's good to know where you come from.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing about
Yeah.
your grandparents and your parents and stories that I've never heard.
I
and-
love to tell it. I love it. You know, more you can pass on, the better. You know.
Well, and I think you connecting with Charles, it shows that there's just always something new and always something you can learn
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
your family and
It don't matter how many generations. It's still your family. You know, and it's always good to know
yeah.
we are from a strong line of women that have gone through some very trying times. Leonard is too. His mama did too. He come from a long line of strong women.
Yeah.
They had things that they had, that losing husbands. They didn't give up. They had to go on and raise families and,
That's right.
you know, live.
Yeah.
You know, they had to go on, you know. And nowadays, I see these women and I just don't understand it. You know, the least little thing, and they throw their hands up, say, well, you know, I can't take it no more.
Yeah.
And what if they had to live like these women?
Yeah.
No income,
That's right.
no help.
They really were defined by their men in their
Right.
lives, and
So-
then that was taken away from them.
That, to me, that is something I'd pass on to you girls, and Daddy can pass on to y'all, is that be strong, you know.
Most of the time, a lot of women had to go to a spring and
Well, they
wash
did
clothes
all the time.
away from the house.
Yeah.
That's true. Even that, I mean, I can't even imagine.
You just think about that in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And I mean, life goes on. Just because it turned cold don't mean ain't dirty clothes got to be washed. And
That's right.
you got a baby, you certainly have, you know.
That's right. It makes you thankful for these modern day
Yes, it does.
conveniences
Yes, it
that we
does.
have.
But then you look and you say, look how strong and what they brought. Poor Grandma P was still having 25 years at least. She was
Having
still having
babies.
children.
I can't imagine.
You know, and she didn't go to no hospital. She had them at home. I know she did. She had them at home. Grandma Jordan had hers at home. And now I think Grandma Loper had somebody, but you know, but I think she had hers at home. But
I'm sure she did.
midwife or something. And just to see that they lost their husbands and just how they made their, went on and had to make do with what they had. That's one thing I hope y'all have all learned is you make do with what you have.
That's right.
You don't have to have everything. You can cook. You can find something to cook. You can find something to wear. You can do something.
And you can have a good attitude.
And you can have a good attitude.
Well, y'all got to go to town, right?
Yeah, we got to go buy a few groceries.
That's what I got to as well. So,
Yeah, we
well,
got to go buy a few groceries.
this was fun, guys. We'll have to do it
I enjoyed
again.
it, yeah.
All right.
If a smile, blessed Savior, as we go not let us fail or stumble as we go along God's way. Lead us on, oh Lord Jesus, Lord that happy home high. I just sin, my blood so precious.